and I felt like I had this massive expansion. And there's no other way to describe it other than it was like the colors were brighter, the sounds were more melodic, and I felt like a cage had been lifted from my heart and I could finally breathe again. So when I stepped into that next phase of my life, that was when everything truly shifted for me.
Hello, happy people, and welcome to the Happiness Curator podcast. My special guest today is Eesha Patel. Eesha is an international channeler, intuitive healer, and entrepreneur. She's the founder of Origin Activation Method, a powerful multidimensional energy healing modality currently being taught to world-class coaches, speakers, and entrepreneurs who are here to share the message of awakening in a big way. Eesha has coached thousands in over hundreds of workshops with international recognition. After building a business teaching meditation and energy healing, she now helps other entrepreneurs get their gift of healing and spiritual mentoring out into the world. Eesha is joining me for a conversation on meditation and how it can transform our lives. But before that, we talk about how she discovered that she was able to channel. Channeling, for those who haven't heard of the term, is the reception of thought from the spirit world for the purpose of communicating with spirits and angels. Hi, Eesha. Thank you for being with us. Can you tell our listeners how you found your purpose?
Hi, Juliet. Thank you so much for having me on this show today. We're diving straight in with that question. How I found my purpose. How woo-woo can I go in this? Because my story is a little bit crazy.
As much details as you want to give us, because I think, people are coming from different walks of life, and it's always interesting to see how people get to where they are, because everybody thinks, the path is quite linear, but actually the path goes up, down, twists, turns, and starts again, and then you stop, question yourself. And see if you're on the right path. There's no straight line. So I always find it interesting to be able to see how people got there, basically.
Right. Okay, cool. Great. So yeah, my journey started when I was a child. And actually when I was a kid, I remember being 9 years old, sitting in my house with my parents and freaking out every night because I could hear footsteps in the kitchen and the tap was always dripping. And I could just feel that there was a presence in that space. And I was quite lucky as a child that my parents really allowed me to be quite open with this sort of thing. And they were really open to these discussions. So I used to tell my mum, I'm like, Mum, there's like something there. And then one day I remember waking up and there was like a woman standing at the foot of my bed. I could see her like, clear as daylight, and it freaked out. I had quite a few crazy experiences like that, which then led me on this discovery of energy. And I remember as a kid, back in the day I think we had a Windows 95, I'd sit there on this desktop computer and the blue screen would come on and I'd jump onto the search engine at the time, which I remember typing in things like how to see ghosts, or I think the questions are more along the lines of actually how do I protect myself from ghosts, because I didn't like them very much. And so then I started going down this rabbit hole of discovering that I wasn't the only person that was seeing them, and finding out that there was this thing called energy in this universe, and that you could do things like visualize white light around you and that would make the ghosts go away. So that was the start of my journey. I then spent the next several years, all through my teenage years, actually being obsessed with anything that had to do with witchcraft, paganism, spiritual. I read every book in the library about conspiracies, Bermuda Triangle. But the funniest part to all of this is a lot of that stuff actually started when I was 14, when I remember going onto Wikipedia, and back then, as you can imagine, Wikipedia, and we're talking like 15 years ago, I think. So 15 years ago, Wikipedia didn't have that many articles on it, but it had some really weird stuff. And it had this option where you could go into Wikipedia and you could click Wiki Random. And I used to click on Wiki Random as a 14-year-old. And I remember the first time I ever did that, and this is where I wonder if, there's a bigger picture to all of this, but the very first time I did that, I came across something to do with these conspiracies. And then I remember clicking a link and clicking another link, and then ended up in some article about Area 51. And then I was reading about the Bermuda Triangle mysteries. And then I was reading about Edgar Cayce prophecies, and like all this stuff was coming to me just through Wikipedia by being open and receptive to this. So yeah, I mean, that's where it started. You know, if you want to fast forward then to, I guess, a more significant awakening in my life, I guess a different level of awakening in my life, was at the age of, say probably 18, 19, when as a teenager, I remember my energy was very, very erratic. And I remember on many, many occasions when I was emotional, when I was having moments of maybe like heightened, like if I was angry or angsty or something like that, you know, or on my period, I would trigger the lights to blow out. And it got to this point where it just became so noticeable in the sense that, you know, you get those like 5-year energy saving bulbs, and I would blow at least one a year, you know?
Wow.
And then there was this one particular week where I blew like 5 lights in a week. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? So then the next thing I did was I started jumping online to see, why do all the lights blow around me? And found out that I was not the only person that was happening to, because I'd walk under a street light and the light would glow. You know, and this happened enough times consistently that I had to actually look it up, and then found out that I wasn't alone, you know. So back then, you know, it was a little bit crazy to be having these experiences where I was just being a kid and being a teenager and finding these random articles that were coming to me and having these energetic experiences with no understanding whatsoever of how it all worked. But then when I got to the age of 19, I remember one time I was having a massive fight with my sister. I don't even know what about, you know what teenagers are like. I think she like took my clothes or something stupid. I don't even know. But the point is, we got into a massive argument. And this one time, as we were fighting, like as I was yelling at her, this photo frame fell down from where it was sitting onto the mantelpiece, where it hit this doll. And so there were these 2 ceramic dolls. One of them was mine, one of them was hers, and it knocked her doll off the mantelpiece and onto the floor, and it smashed into a lot of pieces. And of course, in that moment, we stopped fighting because things were smashing, you know. And so again, it was just one of those real, like, you know, surreal moments where I was starting to just make correlations between my energy field and the things that were happening around me. So yeah, fast forward to when I was 19 is when I met my dance teacher, and for some reason I just felt really resonant with her. You know how sometimes you just meet someone and you're like, wow, I just need to connect with her, and that was the feeling that I had with her. So I went into her dance classes, and suddenly I felt like I could tell her anything. So I started telling her about this crazy stuff that was happening in my life, like the lights blowing and the things falling off the walls and all the crazy things that were going on. And she said to me, Eesha, you know, I've got this meditation technique. I can teach it to you, and it will help you to protect your energy field. So 19-year-old me that was freaking out thinking there were ghosts in the house was ready to learn anything at that point. And so I signed up to this mentoring program with her. And she taught me this particular meditation, which is called a Merkaba meditation activation.
Sorry,
so
Eesha,
she helped me to...
Sorry, Eesha, can you repeat that? What it's called?
It's the Merkaba activation, Merkaba light body activation.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So this Merkaba light body activation, when I learned this technique with her, she sat down with me, she showed me how to do it. And I remember so clearly still my very first session, I went home, and because I had expanded my energy field so much, I had so much emotional releasing happening. You know, it's like when you go through these higher levels of frequency and you actually access the light, what happens is everything that's not in that, anything that you've left buried within yourself, has to come up to the surface. And so I went home from that first session and I cried and slept for 3 hours, and I felt like an absolute wreck. You know, it was the most confronting experience I'd ever had at that point in my life. So yeah, and then, you know, fast forward again another few years, I, by this point, spent many years practicing this technique for, like, every morning, you know, I'd sit there 45 minutes, I'd do my meditation practice, and I've been doing that for years. And I guess that was what got me ready to have my massive spiritual awakening, because when that awakening did happen, it was actually catalyzed by me leaving a relationship, and a few other things in my life were all changing at the time as well. And I just remember one morning waking up and I felt like I had this massive expansion. And there's no other way to describe it other than it was like the colors were brighter, the sounds were more melodic, and I felt like a cage had been lifted from my heart and I could finally breathe again. So when I stepped into that next phase of my life, that was when everything truly shifted for me.
Wow. So basically, when that shift happened, what were you doing with your life at that moment? Were you working for yourself, or what was going on?
I was still studying, actually. So I was a student. I was doing my teaching degree. So I have 2 degrees. I did engineering, and then that didn't really work out for me. And then I was in the middle of my master's degree in education when all of this kind of happened for me. And I will say, one of the most challenging parts of it was keeping up with that. And I couldn't keep up with it. I ended up dropping out for a year because, like, when I had that awakening, within a few weeks, I actually started channeling. So I remember waking up one night at like 2:30 in the morning, and suddenly there were these voices in my head, and it was like these words just wanted to come out of my mouth. And so I just started speaking, and the words were coming out faster than I could even process what the words were. It was like I was speaking faster than I could think. And so I got out my phone and I recorded these words. I can't remember what they are now, but I have like this, it was like a 6-7 minute recording that I did. And that was my first experience of trance channeling. And that was a game changer. I mean, that was also the moment I thought I was going crazy.
Yes, that's what I keep hearing from people, that when they start channeling, they're like, am I going bonkers? I'm hearing all these voices. And of course, if you tell people around you that you're hearing voices, they're like, oh, they not necessarily think that it's about channeling. They just think you're going nuts. So there's also the whole society thing around it. So how did you start realizing that you were not nuts, actually, that you started channeling?
Well, it took me a long time for me to feel like it was not nuts, but I trusted myself anyway. And within 3 weeks, so what happened was, I had that first channeling experience, and then very shortly after that, I started receiving in meditations these pictures, these sacred geometries. And I just got this really strong feeling that I had to share them with people, and I just trusted that. So while I thought I was still going crazy, I got these images and I just made them up on Microsoft Word, and I invited a bunch of people to do a meditation with me with these pictures. And that was my first ever DNA activation event, where I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew enough that those codes were going to activate people's DNA so that they could raise their frequency. And I didn't know at that time how it worked or what it was going to do exactly, but this is where the trust comes in. And the trust was that I had these pictures, I knew that they were powerful, and I had to share them with people. And so I invited people, and people came, and I shared them. And then 3 people in that room had a shared meditative experience where they all saw the exact same thing at the same time. And that's when I realized that these images were so powerful, and they were more than just pretty pictures on a card.
Wow, that's quite something. I keep hearing about this DNA activation. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Right. So our physical bodies have 2 strands of DNA, right? You've got, like, science will prove that to you. But on the etheric level, so I'm talking at the energetic level, we actually have a lot more strands of DNA. Depending on like which way you're sort of looking at it, there's 12 strands of DNA, but they go in pairs, and then each one has 12 substrands. So there's actually 144 codes of DNA that we have access to, right? And each of these particular codings allows you to awaken a different aspect of your consciousness. And by that, I mean, the 2 physical strands of DNA, they let you have a physical body, right? But the rest of the strands are actually to do with awakening your multidimensional being, because we as human beings, we are spiritual beings in a human body. And as a spiritual being, we have access to energetic fields that are so much more than just what's in the physical, and it's beyond what we can see with our physical senses. If you have to explain it, it's like, if you have like an electromagnetic field, right? In that particular spectrum, you've got frequencies that you can hear. So for example, you've got like different radio stations, and you know that one radio station is going to play you pop music, and another radio station is going to play you like old people music, and another radio station is going to play you like, heavy metal. And so you've got different frequencies that you tune into. right? And then you've got the visible light spectrum as well. And so that's where you have all the colors of the rainbow. And so you've got like the Roy G. Biv spectrum in there. And then you've got your UV light and everything else. So everything sits on a measurable spectrum. And if you're talking about the radio spectrum, we use the senses of our hearing to hear and perceive that sense. That's how we perceive that bandwidth of frequencies. And then if we go to the slightly higher frequencies, the visible spectrum, we use our eyes to perceive that frequency. And then when you get to the UV spectrum, we aren't able to perceive that, right? Because we don't have the physical senses in order to be able to perceive anything that's above the UV spectrum, or actually even below the radio waves. So there's a small, very small bandwidth of frequencies that our physical senses can perceive. But when you understand yourself as a multidimensional being, and that we are, made of energy, we're made of frequencies flowing through us, you can use your feeling sense through your heart to actually access all the other frequencies out in the universe. And that, to me, is the entire process of spiritual awakening.
No words, my dear, no words. This is quite something. I guess I haven't activated that yet. I'm, as you know, and I've told you before, I'm just at the beginning of this journey. I've been doing meditation on a daily basis for over a year now. So I guess different people, different things at different times. So it's, for me, when I talk to people like you or other light beings, it's always interesting to understand more and more how we function as spiritual beings. Ergo, these podcasts, to open people's mind as to what is out there. And actually, talking about that, today, everybody's got the word meditation on the tip of their tongue. You can say, quote unquote, that it's become fashionable to do meditation. For you and I and a lot of people, it's part of our daily lives. But how can we convince people that actually meditation, even if they read a lot about it, but it's just not the next big thing, basically, and they're going to do that until, what's the better thing to do? So how can we convince them that this is not a fashionable experiment, that they need to stick with it, and that it really enlightens their lives?
Honestly, I think the best way is by demonstration and example. As much as I'm a massive advocate of awakening and meditation, it's literally my life purpose now to teach this stuff. But like, when I have friends who don't meditate, I don't shove it down their throats. I become the person that I want to be. I become what it is that I want for the world. Because the one thing I've learned in this journey is actually all we really have is presence within ourselves, right? You have, like, each one of us just has us to focus on. It's so easy to get caught up in looking at the outside world and looking at, everything that's wrong with the outside world, and everything that needs to happen, and everything that hasn't happened yet, and everything that we desire for the world. And this is where there's a fine line and a balance between looking at the external, but actually always remembering and recognizing that it's what is within you that is the only thing that's real. Because what's real for me is how I feel every day. It's how I am. It's who I am. It's the beingness. It's the I amness within me that is the truth of my existence. Everything else in my external reality changes. The people change, and the houses change, and the cars change, and then the pets change, and everything is in that space of movement. But when you have a sense of centeredness and stillness, and you're so sure of who you are, not in, I'm not talking about me as Eesha, I'm talking about me as like infinite cosmic divine being, energy, everything that it is in the universe. When you recognize that aspect of you, you don't have to convince anyone of anything. You walk into a room and the room lights up, and there's an exchange that happens in frequency when you embody a certain frequency and you become it, that when someone else is in your energetic presence, they automatically come into that alignment. So I can walk into a room of people who are having like complete meltdowns, and if I bring myself into complete stillness, they don't have to meditate necessarily to be in that frequency in that moment, right? You radiate that and you become that. And when it's so strong, it's like there's a universal law that everything aligns to the highest frequency. And when you become that frequency, what's there to convince, And a big part of my journey, this has actually been massive for me. I'm glad you brought this up, because when I first started awakening, all I wanted to do was tell everybody else to be like me. because I'd figured out this amazing thing and I had it all perfect and I had it all worked out, and I knew all the things and I was channeling, and then I tried to shove it down everybody's throats and nobody wanted a bar of that. And I had to learn. This was a massive, massive learning curve for me to realize that actually everything is perfect. And particularly now with the current state of the world, I really, really see that everything is unfolding in such a perfect way. And I have such a higher perspective on what's happening in the world at this time. And because of that, my frequency isn't going into fear around it. I can't speak for anybody else, because their frequency and their journey is actually on them, and they have a higher self and they have their guides who are guiding them. And I trust that process. And there's a massive level of trust in that greater picture, so that all I then come back to is, well, what frequency am I currently emitting out to the universe, and what is my role in this? Now, if I get guided to work with somebody and to teach somebody, then yes, I'll absolutely do that. But as for convincing, man, lost cause, like I don't go there. I just think people are going to be people, and all you can really do is love them for who they are and where they're at. Because I think the biggest thing in this universe that's really creating so much disconnect is people have this underlying frequency of I'm not good enough. It's one of the core wounds is I'm not good enough, and the fear of abandonment. They're two massive, massive core wounds that everybody has. And when you go around telling everybody to try and do something or be something that they're not, all they're thinking is they're not enough. And I think the most powerful thing anyone can do for another human being at this time is to completely, fully, unconditionally love and accept them as they are, where they're at in their journey. And that is where the awakening happens for them. Because when you see them in that space and you view them in that their infinite potential outside of their stories, outside of whatever situation that they put themselves in, and you see that light within them, even if they don't see it for that moment, they become it. And that's where the power lies.
Yes, I agree with you. But if I think of the first time I remember being, in the presence of a very high vibrating person was actually last year. I went to this talk and met this woman, and the energy that was coming out of her was so soothing. It's like a drug. You don't want to leave it. It was just the most peaceful experience ever. I never experienced something like that before. And I left there, but, I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand how I could vibrate so high, or if I could vibrate so high. There was no explanation. So basically, I used the Google, like you did many years ago. I was like, okay, and starting to figure out where do I need to go? How can I get more information and all of that? So it was a lot of trial and error. And I would say that it kind of dawned on me about the end of last summer that meditation was the way to go. That by centering myself and, like you say, being yourself in this world, that as long as I took care of me, then the right people would vibrate around me, or would learn, or would want to figure it out. And I think that sometimes that's, you say yes, if you're called to help someone, but sometimes people don't know how to ask the questions. And I certainly didn't know how to ask this woman the question, oh, how can I go towards that?
Right. I think that's an amazing question. And I would 100% agree that I also believe meditation is the way, not the only way, but it's definitely one of the better pathways that I've discovered in my life, and the one that has really resonated for me. I will say in that there, this is where it's like there's so many different styles of meditation out there. So like, what do you pick? Which one's going to get you there? Which one's actually going to get you to where you want to go? And from my personal experience, I mean, there's 4 particular practices that I use daily, which I'll actually be sharing with your audience. It's my little 17-minute guided audio. They're the ones that I recommend that everybody does daily. And I mean, would you like me to talk you through them? I can actually give you an explanation of.
I think our listeners and myself would love that, Eesha.
Okay, beautiful. So this is my daily recommended practice. And I will say the reason why I feel these practices have been more beneficial to opening the energy field than other practices is because there are other practices out there that are very focused on the mind. And I've done a lot of other meditations. I've done Buddhist mindfulness. I've done 10-day Vipassana retreats in silence. Like I've done a lot of different like chakra meditations and all sorts. And when I found these 4 practices, it was a game changer in how rapidly I was able to shift my energy field. Because there's meditation for, you know, calming the mind. I'm like, yeah, that's great. If you want to calm mind, go do mindfulness. But if you actually want to awaken yourself spiritually, some of the mind-based meditations are not really going to get you there, right? Or at least it'll take a lot longer. And I found that when you have meditations that work with specific energy fields, that they can shift phenomenally faster and get you into a space of alignment, it just in a much nicer way than other practices. So these are the 4 practices. The first practice is a heart star practice, and it's very simple. You just visualize white light from the center of your heart, and it radiates outwards from the center. Now, one of the biggest difference between this practice and other practices is I've done practices in the past which you just visualize white light, but when I had that light bulb moment about this practice, it was that that light, you're not putting any white light in there, you're finding the light that's already there, because we are that light. Right? And then if you understand where energy goes, attention flows, where attention goes, energy flows. When you place your awareness into the center of your heart and you see the light that's already there and you reconnect to what is already present in that space, then what happens is that light radiates outwards. And that is how you come back into the true natural frequency of what is your soul light. And when that soul light radiates out through your body and your being, you hold that frequency for a few minutes, and it's like your whole energy field gets a reset. This practice was game changer because I used to be highly empathic to the point where I'd walk into a shopping center, and when I had my first spiritual awakening and all the channeling and everything started happening, I couldn't go to shopping centers or anywhere crowded. I pretty much didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go to social situations. I had to drop out of uni because classes were too intense, because everything was so full on. Like I was so sensitive to everything. And then this practice helped me to reset my energy field every day. And so every morning I'd get up and I'd do this practice. And if I picked up anything in my energy field, this would just bring it all back to the beautiful natural frequency of my soul. And then that's the light that I would sit in for the rest of the day. Now, that was practice number 1. Practice number 2 goes really hand in hand with this one, because practice number 2 is what's known as the golden apple. And so they'll get a PDF that has pictures of all of this. But you have this energy field that starts off in the heart, where you bring in golden light through the crown, and then you radiate this light out through the heart like a fountain up around you and around your energy field until you have what looks like a torus field. So it's like the magnetic field of the earth in golden light around you, right? So you're visualizing this golden torus field. It goes from your heart all the way up past your head. Some of your listeners may be familiar with the soul star chakra. So it's actually above the crown. So it goes above that point through the soul star, then down around your entire aura. And then it comes up through the earth star chakra, which is just below the feet. And then that liquid golden light flows back in through the heart. So it's like this beautiful moving fountain of energy. So once you've done your heart star practice and you've cleared your whole energy field and you've reset, come back to your soul frequency, what the golden apple does is maintains the energy field. Now, one of the big things I will say about this one, and this was a massive light bulb moment that took me months to realize, I used to think this practice was an energetic protection practice, but when you're working with vibration fields, what actually happens is you're maintaining the frequency of love within your energy field. And it's not about pushing anything away. It's not about keeping anything out, because that mindset perpetuates duality. And we're moving into a unified field consciousness where everything is in a love space. Now, of course, we acknowledge that there's a mix of frequencies on this planet. So all we're doing is we're having the intention of maintaining that love frequency in our energy field. And there's a particular affirmation in the meditation which allows that anything that's not of that love vibration to get transformed by the field. So that's what that does. So you have your heart star, then you have your golden apple, and then with the golden apple, part of that practice is you also have these 2 golden crosses. So the first golden cross goes from the top of your head down to the tips of your toes, and it crosses at the heart center. And the second cross is just behind you from the back of your head down to your heels. So you've got the heart star radiating out through the middle, you've got the golden apple flowing around you, and then in the center of that, you've got these 2 crosses directly in front and behind you that really support that golden energetic field. And again, there's an affirmation that goes with that, which is in the guided meditation practice. So you do that. Then the third part of this is, and these practices are all done together, so I do them all sequentially in this meditation. The third practice is known as the 3 whites practice. And the 3 whites practice begins by focusing on your sacral chakra. And there is a picture of chakras in the meditation for anyone who's not familiar with them. But so your sacral chakra is your second chakra, which is just below your belly button. And you visualize a white water lily of light that's radiating really, really bright from the center of that chakra. So you visualize that, and when that's really clear and it's holding a lot of light, then you move up into your heart chakra and you visualize the white rose of light opening outwards. And again, you hold that field for a little bit of time. And then you come up into your third eye and you visualize a white diamond in your third eye. Now, what these three practices do is they actually balance the lower chakras, the middle chakras, and the upper chakras in like a trinity. So you have these three major centers all the way from your earth star to your soul star, all radiating bright white light. And then once each of these three whites is radiating really bright, what you do is you open up the rest of your chakras all the way through that channel, and you end up having this white light flowing through all of the chakras. So each of your chakra gets a cleanse in that process. And then once you've done that, you breathe into your heart and you just imagine all this love in your heart. You know, with a clear energy field, you just bring in as much love as you can. And this is actually one of my favorite parts of this. You take that love and you imagine that you're sending it as a gift down to Mother Earth. Because, you know, Mother Earth is as a living being. She has a soul. And when we connect from our heart down to her heart, the really beautiful thing about this practice is a lot of people then feel that energy coming back. And so you actually, you know, you allow that energy to come from the earth up through the feet into your heart and actually feel that connectedness. You know, for a lot of people, when it's their first time doing this practice, this is the game changer, because they're like, oh my God, I can actually feel for the first time grounded. I can actually feel that, you know, that I'm supported. And it's such a beautiful practice. So you allow that light to come from the heart of earth into your heart space. And then you breathe up from your heart and imagine that light going up through the crown and then to source. And then again, you allow that source energy to flow through the crown and into your being. So what we've done then is we've cleansed our energies, we've opened up our chakras, we've, you know, made everything nice and clear, and then we've connected source to earth in a very, very strong alignment. And then we finish up that practice with one final practice of just visualizing ourselves in a pillar of white light that's flowing from source to earth, and that's just realigning your soul in that vertical alignment between source and earth. So those are the 4 foundation practices. I don't do them every day now, but when I was first awakening, it was honestly like, I think I had some days where I was doing them every hour because I was so unstable. So they're the best practices that I have come across ever.
And you said, how long do they last?
I've got a guided audio meditation, which goes for about 17 minutes.
Well, personally, I think that's 17 minutes very well spent. I just feel very soothed and relaxed just listening to you describing them. So I cannot wait to try that.
Okay, well, send it out. Give it a go. Let me know how it is for you.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure that our listeners who will be able to access the meditation and the description of all that you mentioned on the podcast page will be delighted to be able to try this, because like you said, there are so many meditations out there, and people are into mindfulness, you know, and it's, I think at the moment with what everything is going on, you know, people need to calm their mind and then start digging deep into them, because for so long we've run away from whatever has been surrounding us and what's been in us. And I've personally discovered that when you run away from your feelings, then that's when you start getting a lot of backlash and you start going down. So for me, that was actually going down was the best thing that happened to me, because I realized that I needed something to shift in my life, and that's how I ended up here. So, you know, everything, as we say, happens for a reason.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. You know, some of the most down moments I've had in my life ended up becoming the biggest catapult for what happened after that, you know, because once you go that far down, well, for me, you know, it was like everything in my life just suddenly shifted, and there's only one way to go from there, you know, because once you're down, where do? You go up again. You know? And what happens for a lot of people, I find, particularly, you know, if they're going through a spiritual awakening, is they go really, really far down, but then it's like they shoot upwards, because there's something in that strength, you know, that comes out from within you when you're at like that absolute rock bottom in your life, that gives you that power, that momentum to do crazy things that you never would have done before. And before you know it, you're flying.
That is very true. But if I'm honest, for a long time, I was doing all the crazy things because I felt very aligned. And then I had like 10 years of being misaligned. And it's when you come out of it that you actually realize how misaligned you were, which for me was a big, big awakening when I started realizing that. I was like, oh my God, how could I have let 10 years go by? You know, but life happens, as you say, you know, we're humans. We try our best on this little planet, and that's what we're looking for, you know, to get better, to know us, to know each other, and loving each other, because love is the answer. It's not, you know, a lot of people think, oh, that's a very hippie thing, but it's not actually. Love is the answer.
Well, it's cliche but true. 100%. You know, I think it truly is the answer to everything. You know, I do feel that one of the biggest questions though is there's a lot of people out there that are questioning what love actually is. And again, I feel like that quest is for many people a massive part of their spiritual journey. Without getting into too heavy of a topic here, but you know, there's a lot of false misconceptions around what love is. And if you want to get into like codependency in relationships and like all that sort of stuff that can happen where people think that it's love, but really it's an attachment. It's not actually love. And when you understand the difference between love and attachment, you start to really feel into, well, what is love? And my journey with this, which has been massive over the last few years, has really been coming into what is self-love. Like how can I show love to myself in this moment? How can I show kindness to myself in this moment? And when I started doing that, I started filling up my own cup, which then in turn allowed me to serve others with so much more presence.
And that's the thing. Self-love, self-care, however you want to call it, is anything but selfish. You need it to be able to serve others and to radiate what you need to do. Eesha, lovely talking to you today. I think our listeners are going to take a lot out of this. They might have to listen again to this. It's one of those podcasts when you need a few plays just to assimilate everything that's being talked to, and really sure they're going to learn a lot from this. So thank you so much for being on today and sharing this meditation with us and your journey.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Thank you. As you have discovered through this podcast, Eesha is really a multidimensional human being. Every conversation I've had with her have unveiled another layer to her being, and they never fail to fascinate me and wanting to know more. If you'd like to connect with Eesha, you can find her details in the podcast description, as well as in my Facebook group, The Happy Curator Podcast. Make sure to click on the link too to access the meditation she talks about in the podcast. It is free for our listeners. It is fabulous. Until next time.